Welcome to 40k Brunch Gossip, told by me, ShiningNathan, and I'm so grateful you came all the way up to my spire to hear a juicy piece of gossip. Now, as always, glory be to the Emperor, you didn't hear this from me, because some things can be considered heretical, and I'd like us to stay safe. Now, we're talking about a topic that is very near and dear to all of our hearts, and that is the history of our illustrious Imperium. And glory be to the Emperor, it still reigns. Now, it took me a pretty penny and a lot of credits in order to get this data slate. I've been piecing things together from a friend of mine, the Administratum, and so I'm also getting information from my friend in the Mechanicus, who works for the Ford Master General, whatever they call themselves, and another friend in the Ecclesiarchy. So this is gonna be delicious. As always, all history in our wonderful 41st millennium is always delicious, but it's about us, so of course it's going to be even more so. Now, what I pieced together from this data slate is that at about the 15th millennium to about the 25th millennium, mankind had reached its technological singularity, its technological zenith of prosperity. We had left Holy Terra and gone and spread throughout the stars, colonizing planets far and wide, far from the warmth of Sol's light. Now, this is the time period where we created things like warp travel, STCs, and heretical artificial intelligence. Now, we had spread so far and wide, we needed help, so that's why we created artificial intelligence and the STCs. And the artificial intelligence was called, I think, the Men of Iron. But anyway, we lived in peace, prosperity, and we reigned supreme. No dastardly Zeniths could question us. But unfortunately, from what I've pieced together, those good times were not to last, because eventually a series of events led to the sundering of mankind's empire. First, those dastardly men of iron had rebelled against us, their rightful masters and creators. Well, we eventually won that whole kerfuffle, you know what I mean. But unfortunately, another series of events were to happen. Now, from what I heard from my friend in the Ecclesiarchy, something happened with those dastardly Eldar, those nefarious, heretical Eldar, and warp storms broke out all across the galaxy, making warp travel impossible, making communication, intergalactic communication impossible, and so the various planets and colonies all across mankind's reach and breadth of the galaxy were sundered. They were left isolated. But, from my friend in the Ecclesiarchy also told me, because of all this, psychers, now I've only met a couple psychers before, and they are part of the navigator houses, started popping up everywhere, creating anarchy and chaos all across the galaxy. Now, that all started in the 25th millennium, if the data slate is correct, and that is what we call the Age of Strife. Humanity is basically a hot mess. There are psychic phenomena everywhere, and space warp travel is a nightmare. Imagine that we no longer have the ability to communicate with internet on the planet, or whatever we call it here. I don't know, I just happen things work. But thank the throne that our great emperor came back on the scene on Holy Terra. Now, Terra was a hot mess, a boiling cesspit of fighting warlords vying for supremacy, this, that. Well, our great emperor, with his great foresight, moved forward with the creation of something called, these beings called the Thunder Warriors. Now, I've seen Space Marines, the Adeptus Astartes, a couple of times, while up here in the spire. I believe they have a sanctum a couple levels below my home, but the Thunder Warriors were the precursors to the Adeptus Astartes, and they were superhuman, genetically altered and modified superhumans, and he used them to reunify Terra. Now, something really dark allegedly happened to the Thunder Warriors. Now, I heard more than that, but that can be for another video if you'd like. Another little visit with me to hear more of the gossip. If you want to know more about them, I'll be happy to tell you them. I've learned a lot living up in this spire. Now, the Emperor had amazing plans for humanity, and so he took his new Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines, and I think the Adeptus Custodes. I've seen them once on a pilgrimage to the palace. But anyway, The Emperor went out toward the stars and started reunifying planet after planet, and first starting with Mars and then moving on across what is now called the start of the Great Crusade. That's basically, he was trying to reunify humanity all across the Milky Way. Now this sounds lovely, right? It does. Unfortunately, it became a bigger mess, allegedly. Allegedly, it'd be heresy to say it was anything. But now here's where it gets juicy, right? This is where it gets juicy, honey. Because the Emperor had all the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines, who were commanded by the Emperor's sons, the Primarchs. They're all superhuman modified and ready for battle. But there's a big plot twist. Because in another data slate I found years ago when I was younger and much more naive, the Emperor had his favorite son, Horus, dastardly Horus, who started getting all these different premonitions and all these things, and Horus went against the Emperor, his father, and he called these other Primarchs. I can forget how many there were. We can have more gossip later about the Primarchs and give you more juicier tidbits about them. But Horus started what is called the Horus Heresy. Some of the Primarchs and the Adeptus Astartes broke away from the Emperor, and others went and supported the Emperor, the Loyalists. And that kicked off the Civil War and divided the Imperium and led to some seriously awful acts. Now, we're not going to go into the full Horus Heresy. That can be a whole other gossip session. But fast forwarded after all the chaos and the Emperor, it gets into a battle above Holy Terra with his son Horus. He manages to dispatch his son, but he himself is mortally wounded. Now, thinking quickly, the Adeptus Custodes, I believe it is, rush him down to the planet to the royal palace and put him on to the Golden Throne. Now, the Golden Throne, from what I've heard, acts as a life support system for our great Emperor. That is how he is still with us. Glory be. But also it created the Astronomicon, basically a beacon of light, so all of our navigators and warp travel is possible. Now, our Emperor acts as a shining beacon, our God, and watches over us so we can stay unified. Now, from what I heard, again, you didn't hear this from me, because it is high heresy. It has been rumored that the Emperor original plans for the Imperium was not to worship him like a god, but he actually had believed, allegedly, again, this is heresy to hear, that he believed that mankind should worship science and reason and not him. Well, we know that can't possibly be true, but glory be to the throne, he is still with us. Well, now here we are in the 41st millennium. There's chunks of time that have gone by, of course, but we are hanging on. We are always fighting against the awful, hideous zeniths across the galaxy. And yes, the Imperium is a massive bureaucratic mess, but it's functioning. There's a lot of ritual, a lot of things out there, but you know what? We get by. We get by. Now, we have to contend with war with the horrific Xenos called and the Chaos Demons, those nefarious Eldar, the horrid Tyranids. But we can carry on. And let's not forget about those alleged Chaos Gods who are coming in and meddling with the affairs of mankind and all the creatures across the galaxy. Now, if you liked this gossip, feel free to hit the subscription bell, because we can go into a lot more later on when you come back for another gossip session. You know how much I love to gossip. Now, mankind, of course, has our trappings of religious fervor, but I find them delicious and decadently wonderful. So, if you want more in-depth videos about the lore that goes into the deeper minutiae and more specificity, by all means go check out other channels like Luton09, Wes Hanmer, and many others that give you much more in-depth lore. If you enjoyed a little piece of gossip, please come on by, sit and spell, and I can give you all the juicy tidbits to get you first acclimated to the world of the 41st millennium. As always, you take care, and glory be to the Emperor. If you enjoyed 40k Brunch Gossip, consider becoming a patron on my Patreon for as low as $3 a month at patreon.com/ShiningNathan. That is how I keep these projects going and myself fed. As always, glory be to the Emperor, and I love you.